Welcome to the 4D Talks, a series of brainstorm sessions with people who perceive architecture beyond the three dimensions. The goal of these meetings is to discuss what this fourth dimension of architecture can be and how much it impacts the built environment and the uses of the space. Today, we will talk about the present and the future of designing with water. Water is a crucial factor of urban development, design of living and working environments, production of food, energy, as well as fashion industry. Everything has always been revolving around water, and we reach the point where reinventing these relationships is necessary. I invited today an architect, designer, researcher, curator, and educator, Rianne Makkink from Studio Makkink & By. Thank you, Rianne, for joining me today.
Thank you.
Maybe we could start with like a little bit of a personal note, how we met. So I had a chance to see your exhibition in Milan during the Milan Design Week, where you presented the research in the project called Garden of Delight. And that was part of the Waterschool conclusions. So could you tell us a little bit more what Waterschool actually is and what motivated you at the beginning to even start the whole project?
Okay, so that's a lot of questions in one, but I will start where you actually, when we met in Milan, and it was the Garden of Delight was actually one part of the exhibition and about a new environment in the harbor of Rotterdam, because we are based in Rotterdam. And we were asked to rethink urban design through the lens of water. Or we actually proposed that. When you think about water, you can really go back to the beginning, and it's like that's the Garden of Eden. So how would the world look like if you rethink the world through water? So what kind of clothes would you wear? How much water do you need, and what kind of materials would you use if you think through the water footprint as a starting point?
And so this is more of a universal question, right? It's obviously then you try to also put it more in the location of Rotterdam, but these issues are also relevant basically for the whole world these days.
Yeah. No, we started as from in the beginning, so like how would you start them? Because we always think there's now in the Netherlands, like worldwide, a lot of demand of housing. In the Netherlands, we have a request of 1 million new houses. And here in this area in Rotterdam is a request of 3,000. And if you think about 3,000 new houses, it means that you have 6,300 people are coming towards this area. And in the Netherlands, every person uses around 120 liters of water per day. That's the real water that comes from the tap. You know, that's the washing, going to the toilet, because we use in the Netherlands, the toilet water is fresh water. And that's a lot of water you're using per day, almost 40 liters. But then you can also think, or what we don't see as you use for water, that's virtual water or indirect water. That's everything what's in production, what you use daily. And it's a lot about food. You use a lot of water in food.
It's apparently like 90% of this 4,000 liters.
Yes. That's exactly, because you use in the end, and every country has their own water footprint. So every country is different. And in the Netherlands is 4,000, because we produce a lot, but we also import a lot of food. So then you also calculate the transport of the food, what's coming, like almonds or avocados, or what we bring from far away towards the Netherlands. And it's not our calculation. I'm not a scientist. We always work together with scientists of institutes, and this is done by the Water Footprint Network from Den Haag. And they've been calculating from all products, food, your clothing, your industrial, all the computers, everything, how much water footprint it is. So you can rethink actually also the whole, everybody's now talking about CO2, but you also can talk about the water footprint. It's also like almost like a measurement for the climate impact we have on in the world.
And that's something that's like, on one hand, we are talking about it. Like you're saying, for now, I think it's still a little bit more into the direction of the carbon footprint.
Yes.
On the other hand, like you're saying, a way bigger issue actually when it comes to climate crisis is about water, considering floods, droughts, etc. And here, actually, I think that architects are quite a big part responsible for that issue as well. And by that, I mean, with construction sites, we are basically changing the directions of natural flows. We are basically like pouring concrete over cities. It basically changes the whole ecosystem. And it seems like as architects, we don't really think about it much from this perspective. And I'm wondering if that's coming from sort of a lack of sensibility and sensitivity, or is this just a lack of education, which we should get more interested in? What do you think? Where is this coming from, actually?
Wow, that's a huge question. It's also it comes from modernism. It comes from already late 19th century towards the 20th century, that we had the access to a lot of resources that looked endlessly and have a lot of influence on the CO2 footprint or the water footprint. It was always the man is in the middle instead of the environment. Of course, in the 70s, we had already 50 years ago, we had already the whole Club of Rome, and that we couldn't go on what we were using in the end. But in architecture, I've been trained also in Delft, but it was not taken so for serious. We were more like, we wanted to make something good, and the beauty aspect came also into it. So the other choices looked less important. I think it's definitely a matter of education.
For me, I mean, I studied at TU Delft, what was it, 6 years ago, I guess already. It was still not taken seriously. Considering how important this topic is and how many years we're already struggling with it and trying to find solutions, like every single year there are, huge world summits dealing with these issues. So I think, especially from the education point of view, there should be a water school for architects as well, actually, to raise the awareness.
Yeah, because it's not only the material, it's also the problem is actually for building is transport. We are transporting from so far away all the products. And that's, I think it's 60% almost of the whole building CO2 pressure on it. I'm not good with, this is not a good number thing. I don't know enough about that, but I know that transport is the most difficult thing. And what we also said, because when we had to make this Waterschool proposal for these new dwellings, that we say, okay, you have a water transport, it can be simpler, but also that you can make this is a harbor area. How important would it be that you can make the factory also at the spot? So you don't have to the transport. So from all these elements, you can assemble it even here and bring it straight to the spot.
You mentioned mostly the technical solutions, right? Of how this new development could work in Rotterdam.
Yeah.
And I'm actually also wondering, because I do believe that we as architects, we sort of have two roles here to play. Like on one hand, it's how we can make architecture better using less water by using materials that need less water and by figuring out transport systems. Maybe also, using special, filters to reuse water, things like that. But on the other hand, I think as architects, we also have the power to actually redesign spaces in such a way that we change behavior of people through which they can use less or more water. Like, reinvent the idea of using bathrooms or kitchens.
No, not only as architects, as humans, we have to think about it, because as an architect, you make instruments, you make a kind of circumstances that people can use for their way of living. but now we have to rethink much more the holistic way, what kind of environment we want to live in. And that's why we also started this water school here. What happens when you can start from the beginning? Would you start and with, could you not grow your own clothing, like for mycelium, instead of this cotton that it's really polluting, coming from far away? And that you can say, okay, I want to be a pioneer, I want to start from all over again. And water is influencing our whole life. If you think about a holistic way, we are water. 70% of our body, when you start, even a baby, is almost 90% is water. And water can resonate, and water can get information. If you think about quantum theory, if you into that, then you think about water can have a lot of information. So it's the carrier of information. Mm-hmm. And so also we have to rethink, okay, how you have always, we speak in the Netherlands because we are the water country, we was fighting against water, and now we're living with water and much more, but now we have to adapt water more in our lives. I think we have to say we are water much more.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think like, because that's sort of touching upon the topic of biophilic design, right? And having extra quality of water in like around us, which seems sometimes like a luxury. I mean, I think it is a luxury, considering the water crisis. But that's also interesting because, like, on one hand, it seems like Waterschool and the whole conversation about water these days is about how to deal with it, considering that we have an issue.
Yeah.
Like, either it's too much or too little or dirty. And it seems like there is not enough also space maybe in the whole conversation about how important it is to actually maybe keep it clean because it has such a great impact on our health, right?
Yes. Yeah. But we always make a think about crisis, and we never think, what is now actually the starting point we have to start from? And it's always, we accept that our water is actually polluted. And it's in Dutch, I don't know the good English word for it, toelaatbare norm. So it's the what you accept as a society, how much poison can get into the rivers by industries. And we say, yeah, of course they can do it. Of course we accept it. But it's crazy if you think about it. In our fresh water, it's only 2% what's coming towards us. It's unbelievable that we say, okay, money-wise, they don't have to put it back clean. No, we accept that they put it in always with poison in it.
Mm-hmm. So that's basically touching already the topic of policymakers, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that's one of the parts where it should also definitely start. Like, we could, make norms for architects, for example, or it's not just about architects, but basically norms for all kinds of constructions and way of working, living, designing, where, for example, we say like all gray water has to be filtered, or you need to reuse it at least 2 times before it's going like into the pipes and away.
Yeah. And if you think about gray water, it's actually the most beautiful water you have. It's coming from the sky, because that's quite clean. We should do much more as a person with gray water. We always think it's gray water, even the name is so wrong. But it's even cleaner if you put a filter in between than our tap water. It's much healthier. The quality, the energy, what's in it, it's so much better than the tap water.
There are a couple of projects that try to do that, try to collect it. Somehow when I did my research, it looked like it's mostly used in the countries where they really struggle with droughts.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, this should also be the topic for the countries that struggle with excessive amount of water coming from the rain these days, right? Like, because the sea is evaporating way faster now with higher temperatures, there is much more rain.
Yeah.
So this should basically be the solution for all of the countries to try to collect water.
Yes, because we have to keep it in the ground, because it has to go through the ground and filter also already. Because if we send the sweet water from the sky straight away to the sea, it's again salt again, and we can't use it. So we also have to try to keep it in our region. and keep it local and try to, or we have to, it's better also for the land itself. You have less floods, otherwise the river can't deal with it, with the amount of water. That's why you always have floods also. We have to keep it in that it's because we are so, the cities have so much stone now around them. Yeah, all the sewers can't handle all this water floods. So the gardens there has to be more parks, more green, more soil actually.
It seems like a lot of solutions would actually come from good urban planning, which is then related to municipalities as well.
Hopefully municipalities, because they have more interest for the public space, because now also a lot of urban planning has to deal, or it's bought already by developers. So it's a short-term thinking. They don't care about what it's about 50, 60 years, because they don't have to look after it for such a long time. We, of course, are in a kind of a luxury. We always think we're in a luxury world. So we only think about water as a commodity. We can use it endlessly, and it's always available, and it has to be accessible for everybody. That's why it's so cheap in the Netherlands. Per liter, it's quite cheap, and I'm happy for it that it's accessible to everybody, because that's nowadays, I'm very worried. That's my personal worry, and I also want to address it in the Waterschool. I'm invited to go to the COP27 in November in Egypt, and one of my topics will be...
Sorry, I just interrupted for a second. COP27 is the conference for climate?
Yeah, climate adaptation, climate change, the general from the United Nations. And one of my topics is, I'm invited through the Waterschool, a lot of other designers also, and is from whom is water? Because now we know that there is something happening, so there will be more water wars. And one of the sustainable development goals is everybody has access to clean water, but what's not behind it is it for free, or do you have to pay for it? So from who owns the water?
You've already had a first talk with some people who would also participate in that summit. What are your thoughts on that? Like, what do you expect actually from this conference?
It's interesting. Now you're getting back into a system. So we are part of the green as a designer. We're not related to a government or whatever. We are, as a design team, we are 18 people, designers from Europe and designers from the African continent. And we are in the green zone, and it's part of where a lot of NGOs are and other companies, and they will discuss. And also, I think some critical voices will be heard. And there's a blue zone where all the leaders are. And it's really divided. So we don't have access, of course, to the blue zone. So I'm curious what kind of influence you can have, or is it an influence, or what is the discussion we can have together? But it's good also to know a bit on the backside of these kind of institutions. That's why I applied for being part of the Waterschool, be inside of this thing.
So it looks like with the Waterschool, you're really trying to travel the world. And so I know you've been in Taiwan, also in Milan, in Istanbul as well, right?
Yes.
Are you also trying to deal with local issues?
Yeah, we believe very much that every context has its own solution. So it's not like if you think that water is global and the solutions are global. That's I think every surrounding needs its own approach. We have 3 topics actually within the Waterschool. We make exhibitions about this where we do a lot of research. Mm-hmm. We want to try to make a real school. So how can you start from the beginning and change actually urban design and also perhaps architecture if you think about the water footprint. And then you have also the Waterschool. You can make a curriculum. You can make even how to teach people about water. Mm-hmm. 20% at least. We had this 20% rule, if I have it. The own community, a living community, should provide 20% of his own food at minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And also provide his own water, because now we're always dependable on the water systems. But when in terms when something happens, like in disasters, the first thing what's happening is energy is going wrong, water and food. And we have to be more resistant. At least a few days, you have to have this access to fresh water, energy, and food. So that's why you have to bring it much more into your own environment. Also, water, collect water, and then and you have a general with the whole community. You can clean it, not only for your toilet, but also for drinkable water.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the best water if it falls from the sky and going into the cellar.
This does actually sound like architects trying to change the behavior of people, or at least like design things in such a way, such spaces that would facilitate those changes. This 20%, is this something that when you design you're trying to follow, or
it's my rule? Of course, I want to make it larger, say half of it, but it's impossible in a city. It's hardly impossible, but at least because you say we want to change the behavior, but I think it's that we lost the ability to, and we didn't learn it anymore to do it. And it's not such a long time ago. Like it's my grandfather who still lived like that. It's 2 generations. We lose a lot already in 1 generation. We say, we have to learn it again, but it's just bringing back what you already have in your DNA. It has to be also available. We have now also a lot of access to these things. We're not even allowed to grow food in a big building, in your living building. They say, it's not safe. Why it's not safe? So it also has to do a lot with politics in the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like whenever there is a building that's trying to deal with the issue differently, and when it actually went through, then it's promoted, like the Boymans. There is a roof terrace, and they also collect the rainwater from on the roof. So it's now the one of the big qualities of that building. Like you're saying, there are often projects where they actually stop this whole innovation, that the regulations and norms don't allow us to go in this direction.
Exactly. We're so now in a safe world that if something goes wrong with the water, we want to blame somebody. And it's not ourselves, but we want to blame an institution. And the politics don't want to have this risk anymore. So they just ban it. You say it's not allowed because it's the safest way for them.
Mm-hmm.
I think even Boymans is not allowed to use this grey water. If they collect water, they can't use it for the toilets because an institution is not allowed to do that in the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because it went wrong in the 90s. I was part of the 90s of Leidse Rijn. It was a huge new area. And they started there, the first houses had this water system. They wanted to have this water system, the toilets on a grey water system. And then, stupid enough, a guy who installed the water system for the toilet and for the kitchen did it wrong, the other way around. So he put the grey water on the kitchen and the normal water on the toilet. And then somebody got a little bit ill, perhaps, because it was not cleaned, it was not filtered. Mm-hmm. So perhaps some flu or something. Mm-hmm. And then the government stopped it immediately. It was already in the 90s there.
Yeah, it seems like sometimes these innovations need to wait for the right timing.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe if it had been introduced years ago, we wouldn't even have to deal with these issues.
In Belgium, it's already there. They can do it. It's everywhere. They don't care. They're much further. They even have the obligatory tank in every new house. They need a water tank for grey water in their own house. It has to be built. So
it is possible. This could really be introduced in every single.
It's so easy. It's very easy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So is your plan for Waterschool to then like expand all over the world and have a little hub in every country?
I would love to, yeah. But I have to find a way of how to address it. What do you want to address? Because there's so many topics happening. But I think if you can start already with some schools and also think about the whole issue about water, not only about too much, too little, and too dirty, and that's why we want to have clean water, but what does it mean as a human, as not only mankind, but the whole earth, what water means to us as an entity, because water is also an entity. Yeah, it's almost like you have angry water, you have silent water, it's really reacting of a lot we are doing.
Mm-hmm.
But you have a certain amount of people who want to hear this, and other amount of people say that's rubbish. And I think if we would talk about not only in crisis, because now it's always we follow crisis, what a crisis, it's almost like an old soundtrack. And it's already happening 50 years. We're jumping from crisis to crisis. But if we would start, okay, what does it mean? How can we start all over? How would we start all over again if we could start all over again? Just as a question, because then you can say, oh, we can go that road. And now we look as if we are stuck in the road of big disasters. It's only disaster talk. And that's what I also want to say. If you think about the water schools, I want to have it be a positive side.
No, I think it makes complete sense. And it seems like the talk today was mostly still about disasters. But
yes,
since you're going to the climate change conference, hopefully you're going to get some more positive impact there, as well as some positive ideas. And maybe we could try to schedule another talk afterwards with a bit more of like a positive point of view.
Yes, yeah, that would be great. I'm curious myself. I don't know what to expect from this whole conference, but I think every talk about water makes sense, actually. And so many nice, good designers and architects and also artists already try to change things. So it's also collecting all this energy and try to force it a bit more.
Yeah, we are doing it already with light. We're talking about circadian lighting and how important it is to have natural light.
Exactly.
But when it comes to water, we're still quite far behind, where it's actually much more important.
Yeah, it's really important.
All right, that sounds really good. I'm really excited about your trip to Egypt, and I hope you're gonna keep me updated on the process.
Definitely, I will. I hope I come back with a positive talk, but I think I will.
Fingers crossed for that. And I hope that whoever is going to listen to this podcast is also going to be a bit more aware of how important the topic of water is in our lives, and as designers, how important it is in our design processes.
Yes, fingers crossed.
Thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to share your thoughts on the topic, just find me on Instagram at 4dbrainstorm, or simply send an email to 4dbrainstorm@gmail.com. I'm happy to keep discussing it further. If you're interested to know more about what I do, you can also check out 4dbrainstorm.com, a platform for free brainstorming in all dimensions and fields. Join the brainstorm and let's discover the fourth dimension together. Till next time!